How's it? It's Rowan. We damage we. Um. Ooh, nice voice crack there. I just woke up fairly recently, so I think this is the first speaking I've done since I woke up. Um. The signal has been lit. Rohan calls for aid. Gondor must respond. Um. So I was tagged in this tag by Michael K. Vaughan, the lovely institution of BookTube that is Michael K. Vaughan, who had so many kind words to say about my extendedly long ramblings. And he did this tag. It is called the Birth Year Book Tag. It was created by Criminali, and who was kind enough to subscribe to me. I assume because I got tagged in this version of the tag that he created. So hello to both of you. I would hope you are watching. I will try to be more terse than usual. I don't I don't know if I love having a reputation for making 2-hour videos, but I mean, it is what it is, right? Some people will like it. Michael likes it, so I can't. It's whatever. It's fine. So this is all about books and movies from the year you were born. Um, I I am not young, though I am not old either. I was born in the year 1990. Um, I'm 31. I'll be turning 32 later this year. 1990 was a decent year, if I remember right. I didn't actually look any of this stuff up beforehand. I just have like reference lists of favorite stuff that I'm gonna dig into. So, and I can edit out all the awkward silences. So first is a tiered question. It's a question within a question within a question. Have you read any books published in the year you were born? If so, what is your favorite and why? Do you have any other favorites? So like runners up. And if you haven't read any birth year books, which one do you pledge to read in the next 6 months, and why do you want to read it? I gotta say there are a number of books that I really love that are close from the early '90s, like The Secret History or Jesus' Son by Dennis Johnson or The Virgin Suicides. All of those are written in '92 or '93. Looking over the list on Goodreads, you can look up like most popular books by year. So some of the things that were written in or published in 1990 that I have read would include Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Probably not going to pick that. V for Vendetta by Alan Moore and Davy Lloyd. Um, that could probably be the pick. Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. It's a good book, but it I don't love it like a lot of people do. Jurassic Park. I read that when I was a kid, basically. Oh, Pieces Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. Rest in peace. He just passed away. I did read that book in college. Read that in my one of my theology courses that I had to take. It was pretty good. It was an enjoyable book about Buddhism. Oh, of course. The Tankobon first volume of Berserk by Kentaro Miura came out in 1990. So that's my pick. That is my pick for favorite book of 1990. I haven't read all of Berserk yet. I talked about this just yesterday in my weekly wrap up video. I've got volumes 15 and 16 here just off camera somewhere. They're up to I think 41 is coming out soon, which is going to be the final stuff that Miura did before he passed away. Berserk is incredible. I need to finish it. You know, it's hard to maybe like want to speak on it without having read the whole thing. Although it's unfinished, so it's hard to. I don't know. But I just know that it's like I don't really like fantasy, and it's still so much my shit. It's a story. about this guy Guts, who is a mercenary. Um, it's one of the most popular and important and influential manga ever written, and he's got the big ass sword that was completely ripped off by Final Fantasy VII, and it's incredibly violent, um, and the art is just incredibly intricate and detailed, and it's extremely dark and horror infused fantasy, and all of the fantastical creatures are all so weird and disgusting and interesting and fascinating. Miura just has such an incredibly fascinating mind. I wish I could have just picked his brain. He seems like a really interesting guy. Um, and it's a revenge story. If I was gonna be extremely simplistic about it, it's hard to boil down something that big. 40 200 plus page volumes. You know, it's like 8,000 pages of Berserk. Um, but it's incredible and absolutely. Even if I haven't read that much manga in my life. I've read Junji Ito, not all of Junji Ito, but like I've read like some selected stories, and I've read Uzumaki basically, and I've read some of the Tomy, but not all of it, and and I really like that, and that was kind of when I was like, oh, okay, I need to like. I had had some sort of weird resistance to manga, even though I loved anime my whole life. It was like the people who read manga, I was just like, I'm not ready to go there. I'm not ready to go there. Just because the people who, when I was growing up, the people who read manga were pretty insufferable. But also, I have to remember how much those memories are skewed by like who I was at the time, which was also probably pretty insufferable. I try and be more kind and graceful now. And I have also made friends with people who are like pretty weeby, and I'm already kind of weeby, and so once the floodgates opened, I've been more interested. I've read, and I haven't read a ton, but I have been reading Berserk slowly over the last year, and I've really been enjoying it quite a bit. So yeah, um, and the other stuff I mentioned before, there was some good stuff in there, particularly V for Vendetta, which the book is fantastic. The movie is whatever. All of even the best Alan Moore adaptations, it's like they hit all the plot points and they do all the cool stuff, but it's like they kind of miss the whole point. All of his stuff is about like really big and interesting and important ideas, and I feel like none of those ideas are ever present in the movies. Like I don't think that's present in V for Vendetta, though better than Watchmen, the Zack Snyder Watchmen. Zack Snyder Watchmen just feels like an empty shell of a movie. It really, I don't think, it really is not in touch with how much Watchmen is about fascism and the fascistic nature of superheroes. V for Vendetta is in touch with the anti-fascism for sure, but I think it's really lacking in the pro-anarchy stuff that is very present in the book. I think that's really toned down in the movie, and the movie really suffers for it. So yeah, and it's not a super long graphic novel. You can probably read it in a day or two. So yeah, I recommend that. And then, have you read any books published in the year you turned 18? If so, what is your favorite and why? I'm sure I have. I turned 18 in the year 2008. I finished high school, just in time for the housing market to collapse and the economy to tank and go into the shitter. So that was a good time. That was fun. It was also the height, not quite the height, but in the middle of the height of the YA teen boom. When you look at the most popular things on Goodreads that year, almost all of them are YA and teen. It's Hunger Games, Breaking Dawn, Paper Towns, The Host, also by Stephanie Meyer, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, City of Ashes, which is the second Mortal Instruments book, Percy Jackson 4, Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, Graceling, which is a YA series, and then Last Song by Nicholas Sparks. All stuff I don't care about. I have read Hunger Games. It was not very good. Well, there's another book I have read from that year, When You Are Engulfed in Flames by David Sedaris. I'm not, like, in love with David Sedaris. I thought he was fine, when I was that age. But I don't know, my love for him has faded, I guess. I'm kind of amazed that there's so few books from this year that I've read, but also I'm kind of amazed by how bad this year was for books. I mean, I'm looking through them and it's just dog shit. Dog shit after dog shit after dog shit. So, yeah, I think that I've gone down to like 200 on the most popular and I haven't found anything else I've actually read. I think that the David Sedaris book is, I mean, I've only read two, and that's the only one that's not bad. So I guess it's When You're Engulfed in Flames by David Sedaris is the answer. Um, there are a few things on here that I would like to read. Anathem by Neil Stevenson. I've owned that book since it came out. I went to a reading that he did at the Barnes and Noble and got it signed when it came out, and that was 15 years ago almost, and I still have that copy that I've never read. But that's a pretty big ask to commit to that. So if I'm going to commit to something, I think it's going to be The Dark Forest by Chishan Liu, um, which is the sequel to The Three Body Problem, which I have read. I read The Three Body Problem maybe 5 years ago, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I have The Dark Forest and the third one of the trilogy. I own them. And I just have never gotten around to reading them, so yeah, let's say that. And then the third question is, of the last 10 books you read, how many were published before you were born? Which ones were they, and do you prefer the older books or the newer books? I'm going to guess here, without having looked, that the number of books of the last 10 that I have read that were published before I was born is 0. That's my guess. Okay, so the last 10 books that I read were Bonding by Maggie Siebert, Transwizard Harriet Porber and the Bad Boy Parasaurolophus by Chuck Tingle, Amygdalatropolis by B.R. Yeager, Suicide by Edward LeVay, The Sluts by Dennis Cooper, Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. 8 is Leaving the Sea, the story collection by Ben Marcus. 9 is Sorrowland by Solomon Rivers. And 10 is Serotonin by Michel Houellebecq. If we had gotten to 12 and passed, then there was a stretch of them that are older than me. Stoner by John Williams, Et tu Babe by Mark Lehner, No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, Tomb for Boris Davidovich by Danilo Keys. But in the last 10, there have been, as I predicted, exactly 0 older than me. I think the oldest one in this whole list of 10 books is The Sluts, I think. or maybe Suicide. Those are both from the mid 2000s. Suicide, no, Suicide came out in 2008. So the Sluts is the oldest one. Came out in 2004. Out of all of those books I just listed, a lot of them are recent. Serotonin is like 2019. Sorrowland came out last year. Leaving the Sea was like 20 mid 2010s, like 2015 or 16 or something. Negative Space was 2020. Fever Dream was in the last 5 years. Megalotropolis was like 2018. Harriet Porber was 2020, I think. And Bonding came out last year when I read it. I like newer books usually. I am always excited about where things are going, things that are more avant-garde, I guess, or pushing things forward, trying to expand the senses and the reach of literature. That's exciting to me. I don't dislike older books, but I don't really like pre-20th century stuff that much. I've talked about this a lot on this channel, that it's just not what I like. And I don't usually read like brand new stuff. I'm pretty solidly always reading stuff that's like a couple years old. But yeah, recent stuff is usually more my jam. Let's talk about movies. So we get to basically do the same two questions for movies, but why don't we do all three questions for movies? Why not? I mean, I know that not everybody keeps track of what movies they watch, but I do, so it's not hard for me to look at the last 10 movies I watched and see how old they are. Um, so the first question, of course, was what is your favorite movie from the year you were born? Favorite movie from the year I was born. I think this is going to be a lot easier. I'm much more literate in movies than I am in books, as sad as that is for me to admit. Um, so for 1990, I've got two. There are two things on my favorite movies list that came out in the year 1990. The first one is one of my favorite romance movies of all time, David Lynch's Wild at Heart, starring Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern. The other is one of the three great Hollywood science fiction anti-capitalist action pieces made by Paul Verhoeven. The middle of the three, it's Total Recall, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Picking a favorite between those two is tough because they're very different. I think I would, and they're also kind of like, I love them, but I also think that I would say that they are like maybe A tier for their director's filmography. Like they're not the best movie that either of those men have made. They just are both guys who I really like their movies a lot. I'll give the edge to Total Recall, I think, a little bit. Total Recall is incredible. It is such a fun movie. I love Arnold, and I love Arnold in it. He's such a good time. I love the fact that we're doing Philip K. Dick and we're keeping all of the important sort of philosophical, political things about Philip K. Dick, but we're sort of painting it with this Hollywood veneer and making it fun, making it exciting, but we're not losing anything in the translation. It's still firmly a movie about space capitalism and a class warfare and revolution. And it's also a movie about identity and what is real and, who is who they say they are, etc., etc., etc. All those good Philip K. Dickian things. I love Total Recall. It's so good. It's so much fun, and the effects are so good. Um, One of the last like really big expensive blockbuster movies that has like virtually no CGI in it. because I think it was the year 91. I think is when Terminator 2 came out, and that was kind of when the floodgates opened. And then 93 was Jurassic Park. That was the year the Fire Nation attacked. Yeah, so I'll say Total Recall. Yeah, 1990 was not the best year. um, Goodfellas, for sure, and Miller's Crossing and Tremors. Tremors would be pretty high. That almost should be in my top 100. Exorcist 3, Frankenhooker, very good movie. Then we have the same question for when you were 18 years old, 2008. 2008 was a pretty stacked ass year. There are two movies that have traditionally been, I would think of as being like top 5 all-time movies that came out in 2008. The first one is Love Exposure by Sion Sono. I've talked about this movie on the channel before. It's a 4-hour Japanese romantic comedy kung fu sex pervert movie about a kid who's raised by a Catholic priest. His dad becomes a Catholic priest after his mom dies, and then after his dad has this sort of unfortunate fling with a woman, he becomes extremely nihilistic and emotionally abusive to his son, who then sort of gets this flawed logic in his brain that he needs to sin in order to please his father. So he starts becoming a upskirt panty photographer, and then doing that, he attracts the attention of 2 women, one who he falls in love with, and one who sort of becomes obsessed with him. And then there's sort of this love triangle comedy of errors involving cross-dressing and a cult and a guy who gets horny when thinking about setting off a bomb in a public place, and some samurai swords, and someone gets their penis cut off with a pair of scissors. And it's just an incredible movie. It really has everything that I would ever want from a movie in that movie. And it's 4 hours long, but it is not slow. It is a snappy, fun, fast-paced, good time. And then the other movie from 2008 that I really, really, really love, like a lot, is Synecdoche, New York by Charlie Kaufman. I haven't seen this in a long time, and it was my favorite movie, like from when it came out until the mid-2010s, I guess. And I still have a deep love for it. It is a very sad and it feels very real about, like, being a creative, wanting to make stuff, being a kind of, like, fucked up guy. This sort of, like, detachment that your depression gives you from the world, the way that you're sort of unable to manage, your relationships and your family and your art all at the same time. It's sort of like trying to juggle all of this stuff, and some of it has to suffer for others to prosper, and you have to make those choices. And but then it has all of these deeper philosophical questions about, like, how do we make art, and why do we make art, and, like, what is the purpose of making art, and, like, what is the purpose of simulacra? Why do we recreate the world in our art, and, like, is there value in that? And it's got incredible performance from Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was one of the best American actors of all time. And it's just a fascinating and incredible and devastatingly sad movie, and I recommend it to everyone if you haven't seen it. It's become more popular and beloved over time, but people weren't, like, all super into this movie when it came out. It was his first directorial feature. He had only written screenplays before, and a lot of critics were like, yeah, he should have just stuck to what he knows, blah blah blah. Because, like, most of his stuff up until then, particularly Eternal Sunshine and Being John Malkovich, were very beloved. It's adaptation too, but this one I think is the best thing that he's ever done. and which is saying something because I think that he really has done a lot of really good stuff in his career. Yeah, there was a lot of good movies in 2008. That was a good like stretch. The late 2000s were a really good time for movies. 2007, 2008, 2009. Those are some really some bangers in those few years. Um, and then the last 10 movies that I saw. This is gonna spoil a little bit of weekly wrap up, but I won't go too into it because I saw some movies last night. So the last 10 movies I saw first was Inside Llewyn Davis, then Jackass Forever, Ocean's 8 is 3, 4 is Heat, 5 is Good Time, 6 is Brawl in Cell Block 99, 7 is At Eternity's Gate, 8 is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, 9 is The Piano Teacher, and 10 is Funny Games. Now, once again, 11 and 12, both older than me. 13, older than me. 15, older than me. 16, 17, older than me. And 20, older than me. So there was if we had gone a little further back, there was a big stretch where I had a ton of older ones, but in the last 10, we have once again had 0. I would say that I do think probably my taste skews modern in film as well. Definitely 1960 forward is gonna be my shit. If I look at my list of my favorite 100, there are only 3 movies on it from before 1960. And in terms of from after I was born, 60 of the 100 movies are from 1990 or after of the 100. So I definitely have a modern sensibility and taste. I do love tons of stuff from before I was born, but stuff that I love the most, it seems like is pretty often is more often recent than not. So yeah, I did manage to make this not 2 hours long. All right, thanks for watching. I gotta go work, and then I'm gonna go watch movies with my friends. Take it easy.